Let's take a look at some wireless related devices. First, the first device is called STA, which stands for Wireless Terminal Device. For example, our mobile phones and laptops, they have a very professional name called STA. Then there's the AC, known as the access controller, right? The AC controller is used to control the AP, to issue configurations to the AP to uniformly issue configurations. And this AC, you see the device below is the so-called AC, which looks very much like our switch. I won't zoom in for you all. Let me zoom in a bit, right? It looks a lot like our switch. For example, look, this is an AC, a 6005 8-power model AC. You can even find it on Idle Fish, over 400 for one, okay? Then this AC, let's take a look. It has a mode button, right? It has a mode button and it has 6 electrical ports. See, 2 stands for 6 electrical ports. These 6 ports are PoE powered because there's a power in the back, see? What does this power mean? It means it supports PoE power. Then someone asked, what is PoE power? It's simple. Like when we're doing some security related projects, we need to install so-called cameras in the park. These cameras are ceiling type cameras. And for these ceiling type cameras, they are definitely network cameras, right? A network camera definitely has an IP address. It is a network camera, allowing our security staff or our administrators to manage remotely from the back end a network camera. How do you power these cameras? Isn't that a question? Because in a park, there are a lot of cameras. Isn't that an issue? Because we have a lot of cameras in a park, how do you power them? With some ranging from dozens to hundreds or even thousands. How do I power these cameras? You mean every time I install a camera, I would need to provide a corresponding power source nearby? That's not practical, right? So what do? We power it through the Ethernet cable. Because our camera, it's a network camera, right? Just run a single Ethernet cable connected to an AC device with PoE capability. This cable is used for both data transmission and to power the camera. Got it? That's what power means. It indicates it has PoE capability. The first 6 ports and then ports 7 and 8 mean they are combo ports. Combo ports. What did he say about combo ports? It means this AC device, port 7 has 2 ports. Haven't seen that before, right? Port 7 has 2 interfaces. One is electrical and one is optical. One is for electrical connections and the other for optical. One electrical, one optical. Got it? If you use electrical, you can't use optical. If you use optical, you can't use electrical. Makes sense, right? Of course, this optical port, you need to insert an optical module to use it. Ports 7 and 8 are combo ports. The combo port, only the electrical part supports PoE. Tell me, do the optical ports of ports 7 and 8 support power supply? Definitely not. And then the 4th is the so-called console port, right? The 5th is a USB interface. You can use the USB interface to externally connect, right? You can use USB to upgrade the operating system. It's all possible. And through USB, you can update the operating system. Yes. Next, the 6th item is the so-called relay line. When connecting your device to power. And finally, the 7th is the so-called power interface. This is the AC, very similar to our switch. Our AC, it can function as a switch. It has the capabilities of a switch, but our switch does not have AC functions. Some might ask, teacher, what functions does AC have? AC can manage APs. Got it? Can our switch manage APs? Clearly, it cannot. Right? It obviously can't. Or, as far as the knowledge we've learned so far, it can't do it. Then you might ask if there are any switches that can manage AC. Of course there are. Right? Of course. Some switches, they have built-in AC functionality. Alright, let's continue on. This is the AC device, right? And then there's this thing, the AP. AP. This AP is ceiling mounted on your ceiling. Let's take a look. what exactly does this AP look like? The first thing is the so-called security lock slot. Now our laptops, those business ultrabooks all have security locks, right? Then the second thing is DC, right? Which is the power supply. And the third one, what is it? It's a service port Ethernet port. This Ethernet port, you see, it supports PoE input. Just connect an Ethernet cable to this port, right? And then connect it to the AC's PoE capable port. And another one, Ethernet 1, right? This Ethernet 1, it's also a service port. But this Ethernet 1 does not have PoE. Did you notice? The label on port 3 is particularly long. Although we can't see it, right? The text is particularly long. And behind it, it just marked PoE. You see, Ethernet 1 isn't marked, is it? The text is really short, you can see, all dark, right? Then the fifth one is the so-called console port, used for managing our AP. And the last one is for reset, just like the reset button on our home routers. It's the same concept. This is our AP in our AC Plus supported AP architecture. It works very simply by emitting so-called wireless signals. Emitting so-called wireless signals and our mobile terminals, the so-called STAs, as long as they are within the coverage of this AP's wireless signal, they can find the AP, right? And once connected, you can access the internet. That's the idea. And for example, you see now on JD.com, everyone can search for it, something like this enterprise network router. For example, there's a model called AR161WS. This router on Idlefish, you can buy for almost less than 300 yuan on JD.com. It's probably sold for about 1800 yuan or so. Like this enterprise network router, its features are quite extensive, right? Compared to a home router, it has more functions than a home router. You see, it has the functions of a switch. You see, it has a bunch of ports. It has the functions of a switch. Our PCs can just pull an Ethernet cable and plug into these ports to access the internet. It is also a router because this router has to do NAT, right? You want to access the internet, you have to do NAT. Only routers in Huawei equipment can do NAT. Switches cannot. Switches cannot perform NAT. Got it? Then, it is an AC. Look, search down. Look at its specification. See, is it possible to act as an AC? Yes, it can act as an AC. It can discover APs, right? It manages the APs. It can act as an AC with very powerful features. It can also act as an AP. You see, it can act as an AP. It can emit wireless signals because it has two antennas, right? And let's take a look. It acts as a DHCP server. Our terminals, like when we take an Ethernet cable or through the wireless signals, when we find this device, I need to get an address to access the internet, right? It's an integrated device. This kind of enterprise network router, including our home routers too, it is a device that integrates multiple functions. Just like, for example, when we buy this shampoo, there's specifically one for anti-hair loss, right? And also one specifically for nourishment. Some shampoos, they are multifunctional shampoos, both nourishing and caring for the hair, same principle. Got it? This is our enterprise network router. Okay, the last thing is our PoE power supply module. This PoE power module is also used in some special scenarios. For example, our AC, right? Usually ACs are equipped with PoE power functions. Suppose this AC does not have a PoE power function. Then we have installed a camera on the ceiling. How do we power this camera? Right, I can't leave a power source on the ceiling, right? That's impractical. You say I extend a cable down to the AC's port 1, it can't provide power, right? because this AC currently does not have a PoE power function. So what do? We can also buy what's called a power module. You see, it has 2 ports, right? A power module. We just find any place with a power source. See, with a power source, just find any place with a power source, plug this thing in there, right? And then we take an Ethernet cable, connect it to the port on this power module, this power module's port, then extend another Ethernet cable from another port to where? To our camera. At that time, our camera can be powered. Just that simple. Got it? This is a power module. Its function is to overcome a physical limitation. It's a fallback method when your AC doesn't support PoE power. A secondary method. Got it? Understood? These are some of the devices involved in wireless. Not many devices involved.